How are you, man? I'm Gil Roth, and you're listening to a bonus episode of my Virtual Memories Show podcast. This is a COVID check-in episode where I record with a past guest of the podcast to find out how they're holding up during the pandemic. As far as how I'm doing, I am weirdly good this morning. The big work call that had me worked up yesterday turned out to go in a completely bizarre direction. The guy I was afraid was going to create a big problem didn't call in, while someone else brought up a whole different crazy array of problems. But I think they're manageable. In all of it, I came through okay. In the evening, I finally started that ESPN mega documentary on the Chicago Bulls final championship run in 1998, The Last Dance. And I just had a smile plastered on my face the whole time. And I was not a Michael Jordan fan back in that era. I was a Knicks guy, so I hated him, Pippen, Horace Grant, Dennis Rodman, etc., every damn body. And I know the basketball was better in the 80s with the Lakers and Celtics and Bucks and Sixers and all that. But watching those clips, and a lot of the clips for that first episode come from earlier during the Bulls run and Jordan's early career, it just felt like home. It's weird like that. Now, in bed last night, I started rereading The Peregrine by J.A. Baker. It's one of my favorite books. I only discovered it a few years ago thanks to Matt Worker, one of my past guests of the show, who I really need to harass about doing a check-in. The Peregrine is a deeply misanthropic piece of nature writing from the mid-'60s about watching peregrine falcons in eastern England. And it's some of the most beautiful writing I've ever read. And I've talked about it before on the show. This morning, I took my stroll around the yard at 5:45. There's a whole Apple Watch thing tied into that. I'll get into it some other time. But I was just listening to the birds chirping their good mornings in the trees. And as I came around the front of the house and neared the road, I noticed a deer at the top of the neighbor's driveway up the hill, obstructed by a tree trunk, but angling its head to keep an eye on me. And I just stopped there, and deer are a common occurrence here, but it was just the two of us. I looked around to see if there were others, didn't see them. They must have been further behind that neighbor's house. But I just stopped, and I smiled at it, and we both just waited for a bit. And I listened to the birds and the hum of cars in the distance for people headed to work early. And after a while, I just walked back to the house. And I wondered if the deer heard the birds' songs the way I did. If they registered on it and if they mattered to it. The cars probably matter more, honestly. I love how the Peregrine transforms me. And it was just one chapter last night, but enough with the Emersonian mysticism, Gil. Ken Krimstein is joining me this time around from Chicago. Ken is an illustrator, cartoonist, and graphic biographer. His most recent work is the graphic biography, The Three Escapes of Hannah Arendt, published by Bloomsbury. We did a podcast about that a couple of years ago, have stayed in touch since then, and I checked in to see how he's doing. As caveats go, not much. Good audio, no intrusions, and that's all you can ask for. Here's me and Ken. So how are you dealing? How's the month, 2 months, however long it's gone for you been?
Well, I think we're all riding the same roller coaster in a very strange way. I mean, there was that initial sort of, this is really weird. Let's all have Zoom, hangouts with each other. And then we got sick of that really quick. And then we went through, let's bake bread. Okay, we did that. And then, it's like, let's watch Rachel Maddow all the time. And then it was like, no, we cannot even hear the name Rachel said anymore because it just, so that's the kind of external noise coming in. A lot of my, work from school, from teaching in the university is shifted to online, and that's been hard. But the good thing is I've been on a deadline to finish my next book, and I hate to put a good thing on this, but
Oh no, please.
being
That's
in
part of this is the idea that there are projects coming
yeah.
out in the future means something to
Oh,
people. So
yeah.
feel free. So,
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
just I think last week, and of course, days the phenomenon of days losing their meaning and time losing their meaning was weird. I sent a cartoon off to Michael Gerber on that, where the calendar was just like, what day is it? Like I have no idea.
Yeah.
But the book, which is the thing that I have been working on since the Hannah book, is slated to come out, next May, and sometime within the last, noons and nights of a few days ago, I sent the final uh, draft of the copy that I've been working on, and the pictures are all out, and we're getting ready to go into production on it. So it was a really, really useful time for me. To really hunker down and work on that and get letters and notes from the publisher. You're going to have to, we can't get the stuff in New York, so you're going to have to ship all the art to London for the production. And so just to get those notes from them and deadlines, I was like, wow, I'm so happy to have a deadline. It was wonderful. So it's been great. And this book has been a combination of, well, I've been trying to work much more analog. So, it's been wonderful. It's been playing with different types of paper. And, I learned a lot of the production process from last time. So, I've been doing templates and typing the copy and rereading it. And it gave me the chance to run all the words through the word processor about 2 or 3 more times. So that, that was great. It was great to be able to have that moment to sit in my bunker and work on that. So that's been great.
So no Jack Torrance Shining thing when it comes to the self isolation and having to work and all that
Well,
stuff.
I've got my wife and my daughter here, and so there is no. Oh my God! I mean, I'm so lucky. I've got this studio. I've got this, and I just fantastic. No, I love it. I even cleaned it up. I cleaned it up once, so it's fantastic.
Yeah,
No,
I did the cleaning my library and home office pretty much in the first week of all this back in March, and
yeah.
at some point, I guess the urge needs to strike again.
It's been very interesting. I mean, I haven't I've been so busy making the story and making the pictures, watching a lot of stuff on sort of Netflix and other things has really sort of not been that necessary. I have done a couple of look-ins, and getting that final draft out has allowed me to. I've started dipping into this Ricky Gervais afterlife thing, which is pretty interesting. In terms of, I finally got around to getting more of those plastic slip cases from Brodart, and I'm like taking old books that I have occasionally. Just it's very therapeutic to put a wrapper on them and protect them. So
Yeah.
little things like that. But I miss. You're a runner, so you can get out and exercise. I've been doing some walking, but for some reason they've deemed tennis to be like a hazardous thing to do. So I don't know.
Huh. That's a little weird.
Anyway.
Of all things to single out, but
yeah.
Have you, I shudder to ask, or shudder to fill you with this dread, looked at what's coming after you're done with the book?
Oh.
Yeah, see, I don't want you to suddenly say The Void.
No. I mean, I'd love to. I've got 2 or 3 ideas. One just popped up, and I want it to be. I'd love to do something in fiction. I'd love to do just a pure fiction thing, and initially it came out, and I thought it would be like a film. Like, oh, this would be great to do an independent film. I'm like, well, no, not so much. That isn't real. Let me try and do it as a graphic novel or comic. I really thought that. I mean, one of the things that I read over as I've been finishing this was Pittsburgh, and that book
that's such a good book.
It just wasted me. And I know it is memoir, I guess, but the storytelling was just so rich and so wonderful. So I'd love to do that. I have a couple of nonfiction ideas, characters in mind. I don't really want to divulge what they are yet.
Sure.
But I've been seeing some very interesting tweets and stuff coming up. Somebody is doing a biography. I forgot who, but you'll probably know, or you'll get to them, on Bill Blackbird, the famous guy who collected all the old newspaper comics in
Oh
the
yeah,
day.
Eric Reynolds at Fanta mentioned that to me.
Yeah,
Oh gosh, that's I forget who it is, but I got to follow up. That
yeah,
was all from the before time when there was a thought of actually meeting people in
yeah.
person to record.
Well, I think yeah. So that looks great, and I've been thinking about doing some. I've been in this thing where I've been like wool gathering people that would be interesting, but I love the idea. I mean, I'm going to say something. I'll do props to people in showbiz and stuff, but in a way, again, always try. I mean, like, we don't have to cast people. We don't have to get lights and craft tables together when you do these comics or graphic novels.
Yeah.
So maybe content, can still, and obviously novelists don't have to do that. So, I'm keen to do that, once I get this thing firmly behind me, although I've started pulling out the note cards and thinking about these other things. Yeah. Yeah.
And tell me about the new book, because I remember you mentioned it back when we recorded around
Yeah.
the Hannah Arendt thing, but it was early enough you didn't want to give away
Yeah.
what you
So,
were doing.
yeah, thank you. So it's called, and I believe the title has been locked in. It's called When I Grow Up, and the subtitle we're working on, but it's something like the lost autobiographies of pre-war teenagers in Eastern Europe. And
That's kind of long. You'll need
it's
to come up with
long.
something
I
shorter.
know. I think we'll just do like, when I grow up, read this. No.
Yeah, that'll work. Buy me now. Yeah.
But it's lost autobiographies of these Yiddish speaking kids that were, they did like an ethnographic, God love these people. They were looking forward, and they said, let's find out what let's follow the lead of the teenagers. And they generated this YIVO, which was sort of the de facto university of what I'm calling Yiddishuania, which is the whole 10 million people, or 8, 9 million, whatever, a lot of people, did this ethnographic study for the grand prize of 150 zlotys. And they got about 600 or 700 of these in, all before the war. And many of them were lost and destroyed. And over the years, little bits and pieces have come out. And a couple of years ago, there was a story in the Times. They uncovered a bunch of these in a basement of a church in Vilnius, and they're all in Yiddish, and they're all like on little blue books, and they're incredible stories. They're done anonymously for because they really wanted to get veracity. And oh my God, I went over there. I can't believe it's been 2 years, and I found a great translator, and I took pictures of them, and they're heartbreaking. So I've got, and they're fun. I mean, they're teenagers. These are teenagers,
Yeah.
when you're, I mean, they get as old as like 20, but they were like, it's all about, I want to, I can't stand my parents. I hate this. I love this girl. Normal stuff. The teenage, there was a thing of dread, but there's so many ironies. The greatest irony is that the grand prize was to be awarded on September 1st, 1939. That was a bad day. So everything was lost, and now it's kind of come out. And so I'm doing the story of how they were saved by a very heroic communist, non-Jewish librarian in Vilnius, who basically, sort of did a Fahrenheit 451 and said, we don't destroy books, and at the risk of his life. And then it was found by accident, and then there's 7. I've found 7 stories, and they range from, I mean, they're wild. So we don't know who. Well, with the exception of one, you don't know who they are, but you have their words, and they're very honest. And so I did a lot of photo research, and I went there, and it proved to be much more gnarly than I thought it would be, because each one has to be an entire story, and they all have to be different, and they have to build. So it's been really a wonderful. It's been a wonderful project. I'm just psyched. And as I said, I've been using I've been using ink on paper and watercolor, and yeah, it's been great. So
and I was going to say doubly good because it keeps you from thinking too much about, the present moment, I guess.
Well,
Keeps you from being too preoccupied,
well,
knowing that you have something,
it shows you that it kind of has shown me, and it's weird, it's like the Hannah Arendt book kind of never went away, because as I said about her, she's a little bit like those, with all due respect, Hannah, the old Roach Motel ads they used to have on the subway in New York. Once you check into Hannah, you never check out. I mean, like,
right.
Once she gets into your head. So again, just like she did during the election of 16, and now, I mean, I think her wisdom has kind of helped me through this. Um, and then seeing what these people have done, these kids before the catastrophe, it just, yeah, the present moment is horrendous, but somehow or another, life goes on and things get rebuilt. But the Hannah thing is like, people say, oh, you're not realistic. We can't change the world. Everything is the way it is. Well, there are no planes flying, gas, last I checked, you have to pay, they have to pay you to take oil. There are dolphins in Venice. There were 0 homicides in Miami. I'm not trying to paint like a rosy picture on this, but the world can change.
Yeah.
So, it's kind of, it's horrible what's happening, and we don't know, and all the seams that are coming out. But dealing with stories of heroic people, which these kids kind of were in their own way, yeah, it has been a welcome departure, I must say. Yeah, even though it was a horrible thing that happened to them. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Do you find yourself utopian thinking going forward? Do you find yourself considering the possibility of significant change?
Yeah. Well, except for the fact that, I joke to some of my friends that they were right. Actually, those illustrators in like the, Weird Science magazine in the 1950s were right about 2020. We're going to be wearing spacesuits. We're going to have we're going to have big, fish bowls on our head, and they're going to be like jumpsuits. But other than that, I don't want to come off like, whatever, but like some of these celebrities that have thrown out really wacky ideas. But I do think, maybe it's just the way I think. Like, I'm seeing people walking around the neighborhood. I'm not hearing planes flying over, Evanston every 20 minutes, which I realized used to make my shoulders tense up every time. So I'm hopeful that, I just heard on the news and got it by the time this runs or whatever, I hope it's still going, that Milan is thinking about, reducing vehicular traffic. So, I think there could be some, maybe we've overextended some of the supply chain lines. Maybe people should start growing stuff locally. I don't know.
Yeah. How is your neighborhood, and how is Chicago as an area in general?
Yeah.
As you're seeing it?
Well, you can get anywhere really fast. I mean, my kids live down on the south side, and we can get there in like 20 minutes. So it's I find it very, very strange. I'm not in an urban area like when I lived in Manhattan. That people, they go in their homes, and the weather's getting nicer, and we're kind of sitting out on porches, but people are following the rules, and we just don't know what's going on. I feel glad that the governor of Illinois seems to be sort of on it. Yeah, it's probably like it freaks me out. Like, I saw a thing, I was watching something, and they have, like, this is the 300th year anniversary of the something or other in Vilnius. And of course they couldn't really do it, but like 2 people met, and they were wearing masks. And I'm thinking, like, God, I was in Vilnius too. Like, everywhere in the world, people are wearing masks. It's mind blowing. I'm worried because, as I was saying to somebody, there are lots and lots of people, and they're also all sitting around on their computers. and they're probably not all doing, nice things like listening to Gil's podcast. It scares me a little bit too. I don't want to be naive, but I do think, the human beings do have the capability to if we listen to each other, to make things good. That's why I'm kind of being hopeful about, maybe people are going to read a little bit more, look at more graphic novels. I don't know.
Are there any projects you're looking at like that in terms of reading,
Oh,
especially now that you're getting past this one?
Yeah. Well, I tell you, I've kind of read True Grit a couple of times, and I never really knew how amazing Charles Portis is. And
You're getting to the other ones.
I read Norwood, and I was like devastated. It was so good. It was like it's like, what, And now I'm in the middle of Gringos, so that's
the least of the 5 books.
Is it
in
really?
my opinion?
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, that's his last one.
It could be. Oh, that was his last one. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, last one was like 1991.
Yeah,
so he just didn't publish. Masters of Atlantis is incredibly weird.
Yeah.
Maybe good. It's very different than Dog of the South and Norwood. True Grit is really the outlier in terms of non-contemporary stuff that he did. But yeah, let me know what you.
Oh my goodness!
Because I assume you will go through all 5 books.
I'm going through all 5 of them. I mean, we watched. I was kind of like, oh, let's watch something. So I thought, oh, the old 1969, True Grit with John Wayne. I always thought that was good, even though I read it. It was good. It's not exactly the book. Then I had Norwood, and it just blew my mind. And then after I finished it, I did the Wikipedia thing, and he just passed away. And he was
I thought that's what triggered it for you.
No, I didn't know.
Gosh.
I didn't know. Yeah. And he's one of those people that has always sort of been around, but just that Gil, talk about a respite from this, being in sort of Texarkana and riding buses and with little fans blowing out warm air, in 1966. Well, that was just catnip for me. I loved it, man.
Yeah. We got news about his death. It was mid-February when Amy and I were on a business trip in Japan. So I have everything in print here, but I figured, let me grab one book on my Kindle while we're traveling. I'll read something. I grabbed Masters of Atlantis and restarted that. But yeah, that's my later this summer, is to sit down and go through.
So where do I go next? What's the next one?
I would do Dog of the South.
Okay.
And then Masters of Atlantis as your last one.
Got it.
Dog of the South and Norwood are somewhat similar. Masters is so weird in comparison. And then you can go back and read True Grit all over again.
Well, then a friend of mine was like, you got to read Cormac McCarthy's trilogy, not the Blood Meridian, but some trilogy that he did earlier on.
Oh, he did the horse trilogy thing. It started in the 90s.
Yeah. So.
Oh gosh, All the Pretty Horses was the first, the Border trilogy. That's it. And I've only read that first one. I was in grad school. I didn't understand what the hell he was getting at. So I'm not a good judge at all of McCarthy.
I got to tell you,
the Coen brothers loved him.
Yeah. Well, no, Portis is just, he's a delight. His tonality, his pacing.
And Norwood hypnotizes a bunch of chickens. And
oh my God! Yes, of course.
I fell over laughing reading that on an airplane.
Funny.
My wife's like, "What is it?" I'm like, "I can't even explain it to you." And she got to the same part and fell over laughing the exact same way. I'm like, "Oh, thank God! This is the person I need to spend my life with."
Oh my God! It was unbelievable. Yeah, well, she's got good taste. But I mean, did you not? I mean, I think Midnight Cowboy was like a couple of years after that. And boy, I bet. I mean, it was capturing that same vibe. Riding the bus up from the South and. It was just wonderful.
Anyways, other literary escapes or graphic novel escapes?
Yeah. I mean, it's balancing fiction and nonfiction. Some podcasts. I dipped into Swan's Way. People said, do that. And it's such a rich bouillabaisse. It's so fantastic. I just love it. But then. As a palate cleanser, Norwood came and it raised the stakes pretty high.
They're very, very different tones. Yeah.
Yeah. I like listening to this podcast, aside from yours,
of course,
called Something About the Beatles. This guy Rodriguez out of Chicago, and they're really, really good. And he and a colleague of his did 3 hours kind of, and they know everything. I mean, they know everything. Kind of production notes to Peter Jackson about how to edit the upcoming remake of the Let It Be film, and the clips and the stuff that was in there was just amazing. So that I hope Jackson is able to keep editing that from his laptop, because I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, you figure some of these guys have a pretty good remote setup at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
If I can do this at home, chances are they've got the technology and
Yeah.
internet connection.
I'm trying to think about. I mean, it's a wonderful time actually, because I'm hoping that the libraries give us like forgiveness on all the books that I have. So now I'm like, I can't go to the library, and then I discovered Scribd, which is really pretty crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm trying to go through like all the books that I sort of have laying around that I've been wanting to read, and that's why the Portis luckily had these two on hand. But graphic comic stuff. Just dipping back into some of the classics, rereading, looking at Wally Wood and looking at the EC stuff, which I never tire of, and you know, um, collections. I found a weird just before the plague. Actually, you being an aficionado would probably not rate this very highly, but it's kind of weird. It's called here. I'm going to try and get it without pulling my
Oh, no
headphones
worries.
out. Hold on. It's a DC called The Unknown Soldier. It has a cover by Joe Kubert. It's
Yeah.
about the Warsaw Ghetto, but in some kind of warped version of it. So that was wacky.
Huh.
Yeah. I mean, I'm enjoying. I've tried looking into doing some gag work, but finishing the book has just been monumental.
There's also I had Emily Flake on a few days ago, and doing gag work that doesn't involve gags about Zoom or toilet paper
Yes,
is
yeah,
pretty tough right now. And
yeah.
coming up with a new angle on either of those is pretty tough right now. So
Yeah, I mean, I did hear something that is an angle on it for anyone else. I don't think I could do it, but and if there are any cartoonists out there, you can have this idea. But I heard somebody say on the on the news that Lord, of the Royals fame, that song, she's due for a record, and look, Safe Space. I love people who love animals and stuff and everything, but evidently her dog, she had to put her dog down, and she's in such a state of that she can't even do an album for like years. So I mean, that's I don't know if there's anything in there.
I think there was a Fiona Apple thing with that too. I think her it was in Emily Nussbaum's profile of her that apparently she was multi-year layoff after putting down her dog.
Yeah, I mean that's okay. I mean, I've gotten very close to my cats over this period. They're kind of like, "What are you still doing here? Feed us again."
Yeah,
but
yeah, I do sort of wonder how the pets are going to function once we finally leave the house, and start getting back to routine. But.
Yeah, I mean, I have been dipping in on some Zoom stuff. The Hannah Rent Center is doing like these things, and I've been listening in, reviewing some of the Men in Dark Times and the essays, and it's nice to see other people talking about it. I do think there has been kind of an interesting blossoming of online spoken word content, and I feel like, but books and comics, just you can hold them. They're comforting. They're quiet. It's just yeah, it's great. And that's it. I mean, I've been enjoying catching up on different podcasts. I heard a nice one with Hillary Chute about Spiegelman, which was kind of interesting. And I'm glad you're doing this. I mean, there's a side of me that was like, oh, I'd like to chronicle this, but I've been working on other stuff, and I wonder if any of this will filter into my work, as I'm revising. Like,
yeah, that's sort of my meta question for a lot of you guys who are either in the middle of a creative project or heading towards one. What effect? Not does it directly deal with this, but what effect does all of this have underneath how you tell a story? I mean, what you're doing?
I think we've been hit, as Hannah would say, and as people say, contingency. Like the world has bit us big time on the ass in a very scary way. I mean, I'm surprised actually looking around at some of my friends who I've considered to be highly neurotic in normal life are coping extremely well, and other friends of mine who seem really well put together are freaking. So I'm observing how we're all reacting to this enormous uncertainty. It's maybe very sympathetic to what people must have been going through in World War II or in that period when we have this invisible killer, that is like this sort of Stephen King-ish, thing.
Mist, yeah.
And in those days they actually had men making missiles trying to blow them up, but it was still, the news becomes more important, community becomes more important. And, it's funny. I don't know if you've had this, Gil, but like some of my magazines, they have such a long lead time. They come in and they were, like the May issue of Nameless magazine comes in and you look at the articles and they're like, seem so trivial.
Travel advice and things like that. Yeah.
What to wear to work, or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. So yeah, it can't not affect it. So it's been a jolt of adrenaline to it.
I guess last question, just you mentioned that sense of community and being in touch with neurotic and non-neurotic friends. Have you been reaching out more to people that you hadn't been in touch with for a long time? Or have people reached out to you?
Well, that's a great question. Yeah, the answer is yes. Particularly, really what I would call like good friends, like college roommates that, people that I sort of have been, we're like, well, we'll see each other every 3 years and it'll be totally great. And, old, childhood friends who live, on the coasts. And, I was on the phone with my, one of my college roommates the other day. He and his wife are doctors out in California, and good God, we were on the. My wife came by and said, "You were on the phone for like an. I never talked to anybody for an hour except you.
Yeah, well,
but we were on the phone for an hour, and yeah, it's that part of it. It's funny, like people have reached out of the woodwork. It's been very, that's been kind of poignant, I guess you would say.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and to me, that's something I wonder how much we'll keep up once this is over, once we're back out in our regular commutes and everything else, whether we'll hold on to that sense of community, those longer term bonds, I guess.
I sure hope so. I do hope so.
Because I promise I'll call more often.
Yeah, no, Gil, I'll clear, but I mean, it's that sense of community. I think it's a sense of value. Maybe we've been, literature, the things that, it's interesting. I was, talking to some people and reading some stuff, and people are saying like all the stuff that we kind of value, like, I don't know, music, story, pictures, truth, rubbing up, food, maybe food, whatever, that stuff becomes more important. That stuff, it's like, like they asked, I mean, this sounds a little bit weird, but I kind of always remember this. They asked somebody, Churchill or somebody, like, why are you having these afternoon concerts during the Blitz? People could get blown up. And he's like, because that's like what we're fighting for. That's what we, we want to be able to listen to music. So I guess maybe that's an optimistic take. But there's plenty of stuff to read.
That's what we have to have going forward, man.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Gil.
Sure, man. We'll talk soon.
All right. Be well.
That was Ken Krimstein. Go check out his graphic biography, The 3 Escapes of Hannah Arendt, from Bloomsbury at your favorite online bookstore, since we can't go into bookstores right now. Ken's website is kenkrimstein.com, which is KENKRIMSTEIN.com. He's on Facebook as Gag Cartoons, Twitter as Ken Krim, and Instagram as Krimstein Cartoons. And we'll be back tomorrow with another COVID check-in. If you want to send me a little update to read on the air or have something you want to share with the listeners, let me know and we'll set something up. I'm at groth18@gmail.com. That's GROTH18. You can find my contact info at either of my websites, vmspod.com or chimeraobscura.com/VM. And you can find a link to the COVID sessions, the COVID-19 sessions at both sites, with all of these daily episodes. You can also just subscribe to the Virtual Memory Show via iTunes, Spotify, or plugging the RSS feed into your favorite podcatcher to make sure you get every episode. Now, in the before time, I always recorded in person, but now I am using Zencastr.com to record remotely. If you're interested in it, it's spelled Zencastr, so no final E. The pro level is $20 a month, but my Patreon supporters more than cover that, especially since I'm not spending money anymore on parking and tolls and subway trips, etc. to record all those in-person episodes. So if you can spare anything, don't give me any money. Give it to the artists and writers you like through their Patreons, Kickstarters, Indiegogos, GoFundMes, tip jars, whatever. Show them some support. Artists, creative people, they're generally in greater need right now. If you don't have ones you want to give directly to, then give to charities, local food banks, etc., and just other places that'll help people in need. I am Gil Roth. It is April 28th, 2020, and this was a bonus episode of my Virtual Memory Show podcast. Thanks for listening. Keep the conversation going, stay safe, and wash your damn hands.